Now, Worldmaking Beyond SOAS is an initiative that I thought to pilot in this academic year as part of the process of thinking through how do we as an institution process, make sense, and collaborate across the university with our students, alumni, as well as with social justice movements that are deeply invested in questions of racial justice. In the institution, for those of you who work and teach at SOAS, there have been lots of debates that have been animated around questions of belonging, racial equity, and racial justice, and what that means for us as a university that has a history, like many others in the UK, of being grounded very deeply in meeting particular colonial and imperial objectives. My own personal position is that our institutions, our universities are simply a microcosm of our society. What we experience here really is an indication of what happens outside of the university, and how, therefore, through our teaching, but also in the ways in which we collaborate with others, engender the fact that we cannot always be navel-gazing at the institution and what SOAS needs to do, but what are the ways in which we also stretch and expand ourselves within our communities around London, but also outside, who are also actively engaged in these questions as part of the process of dialogue and building a process of belonging. So it is in this test of stretching that Worldmaking Beyond SOAS was born, and 5 projects were sort of seeded with small amount of money to test what this would look like, what these collaborations could look like. I'm glad to say that we have worked with students who are actively registered in the university at the moment, for instance, through the work on the New Histories Project. Part of the work has also brought in former SOAS alumni. Onyeka, seated at the back, is a student I taught many years ago at the Center for Gender Studies who has collaborated with Just Associates. And it has been great to see the kind of reinvigoration and engagement that has happened between social justice actors who also view the university as this place where, well, you know, we like to talk a lot and say big things, but do those things actually make meaning in the world that they're actively involved in?
Now, Senegal also had its unique form of caste system. It still has, which is known for its own unique occurrences, and today still it is very much a institution that is occupational in hierarchy, but also that has a permanent endogamy passed as a social law. And here I would like to refer to a professor at Cheikh Anta Diop University, Penda Mbao. Penda Mbao is somebody who belongs to blacksmith, the lower caste communities. She was a minister and also advisor to the president of India, president of Senegal. However, she could not marry her partner for 40 years because there was a different caste distinction. She could only marry, and she married a few years ago. And when she married, it was a whole celebration that this is what we have come to decide, that caste has been overcome. Senegal press, of course, supported that move.
A local myth that William Bryant, of course, was the owner of the Bryant and May Match Factory, which was around the corner in Bow and employed mostly immigrant Irish women and girls in appalling conditions. And it is said that he paid for the statue of Gladstone out of gratitude at the end of Gladstone's life, that he never regulated the factory or imposed a tax on matches, both of which were discussed. And moreover, in doing so, he imposed a temporary tax on all his workers to pay for this statue. And they were so incensed that they cut themselves. They went to the unveiling of the statue, they cut themselves and threw their own blood at it. Now, as a professional storyteller, that feels like it's had a polish to me in terms of stories, or at least gained something over the years in its retelling. But this legend lives on, because whenever anyone tries to scrub off the red paint on Gladstone's right hand, which Tower Hamlets Council did do, particularly in the run-up to the 2012 Olympics, it always, overnight, gets repainted. So this statue itself has become a site of its own small act of resistance.
Communities coming together to challenge how states might be acting in ways that are both oppressive to specific categories of people in the society, or to challenge and push back against movements that might be gaining ground around challenging both state policies, whether it's in relation to managing protests or criminalizing protests, whether it's in relation to states and criminalizing of movements, women human rights defenders, and other organizers working for change. So, for instance, the attacks that have happened on critical race theory and the sort of convoluted ways in which scholarship around critical race theory specifically, and scholarship around race generally has become demonized, both in the United States of America, but also within the United Kingdom. You see that surfacing quite a lot, both in parliamentary conversations, but also within academic spaces, in which you see critiques around the value or the veracity, the empiricism, or the strength of academic theory that is linked to questions of race, racism, and critical thought, much more specifically.
You know, I'm going to just begin with the caveat that, you know, kind of far-right influence in universities isn't really my specific research area, but I do think it's something that we should all be concerned about and alive to, and you know, educate ourselves on as far as possible. And well, in terms of the personal experience that Awino is talking about, I did end up doing something of a kind of accidental ethnography where I found myself in a department, basically at another institution with at least one white supremacist and a number of his supporters and enablers, basically. And so the individual in question is really well known for what amounts to hate speech against minoritized groups. You know, he teaches and he reproduces these conspiratorial ideas around white replacement and cultural Marxism, you know, and often in slightly coded ways, but it's still very much recognizable. Talks about black and brown overpopulation as being the root of all the world's problems, and so on and so forth. And I think one of the things that disturbed me the most about being in that context was how nobody spoke out.
A very brief bit of background on Duende. So it was a theatre project originally imagined by myself and Rachel, who's now called Rachel, so I'm the only one who's now lying and calling myself Edward. And according to Angela Davis, art is a social consciousness that has the potential to influence feelings as well as knowledge. And it feels that access to art is crucial now more than ever in the UK where I'm based. We're currently seeing arts and humanities courses being cut except for the privileged few. So we, in making this project, and very much the part of the context of us talking right now, is about us working in a challenging physical and political project towards accessing the arts more freely.
Blackness in and of itself is also kind of understood quite depending on where it is that you come from. So as a person who was raised before apartheid was over in South Africa, my identity as a young Black woman is formulated by those type of political ideologies, vis-a-vis another close friend of mine who might be from Zimbabwe.
Are you here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
it
12.
had to be.
Okay, good. It's fine. We're moving.
Okay.
There is a reason why this pack here is smaller, because there's already.
They all here.
Move forward 6 spaces.
Here we thought life was good to us.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah.
Final.
Go ahead.
It's my turn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Aren't you there? Forward.
Yeah. I think let's move ahead. Let's all move ahead as much as possible.
Decolonizing philanthropy is a term that Edgar, that I've quoted extensively, uses, where he requires philanthropy to assess where money comes from, whom philanthropy chooses to give to, and how giving perpetuates the very problems that we're trying to solve. And I think it's time for us, and those of us on the inside, to pull back the curtain and examine white supremacy and coloniality that's at the root of philanthropy's project, specifically in relation to Africa.